Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Taco Society Presents. We're here back in the studio. It's been a couple months.
It has. It's been at least 3 months, I think, right?
Oh, it feels real good to be back.
It does.
We had Nikon took up 1 month.
Yep.
Well, not Anthicon, but NoCon took up another month.
Right. I couldn't make either of those, unfortunately.
No.
I was supposed to go to another con down in Virginia, Scares That Care, but last minute things came up and I was unable to go. And I had all my books bought and purchased to bring down and sell, and I had a reading set up and everything, and it just
the last minute didn't go.
Yeah, personal problems, you know.
Well, Nikon and Scares That Care were at the same weekend, so you had to make a choice which one you're going to go to. And I'm a devoted Nikon guy, and we were making fun of Patrick Lacey, if you saw one of the earlier shows, about picking Scares That Care over Nikon. But,
well, he was at my table at Scares That Care that I have down there that I didn't go to, but he was supposed to be at our table for the Dark Discussions podcast, and he sure was, and he sold a number of books, about 18 or 19 books, and he had a reading himself.
Good for him. Yeah. He's a good man, and once again, it was all in fun, Patrick, if you're watching this. But it was a good time at Nikon. He said it was a good time at Scares That Care. Scares That Care, and Scares That Care it's a benefit organization. All the money goes to
a couple of charities. So three people are chosen by the man that runs it, and Joe Ripple, ex-police officer that's retired, and all 100% funds go to those folks. Breast cancer, a burn victim, and then one other person with something, and I forget. Yeah.
Well, it's a nice charity, and we make fun of people that go there, but we're glad that it went well, and we're glad that they raised a lot of money for it.
Yeah, and actually next year, Brian Keene has become a full member of the staff. Donated his time. Won't even have a table next year to sell. He's just going to be there running the entire podcast and book section. So.
And it's the same weekend as Nikon again, so I'll be missing Scares That Care.
Oh, is it the same?
Same weekend,
it is,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's just one of the things that happened. There was say one of the things. NoCon was the second one. There was a Joe Hill signing here in Manchester that I went to, and that was certainly a lot of fun.
Right, and that was at the big
That's
bookstore?
Barnes and Noble,
Barnes
here in
Noble,
Manchester.
Yeah. I saw him there 2 years ago, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, he's making the rounds for the firemen.
Yeah, I saw him when he released the one with the Nosferatu.
Nosferatu,
the one with the license plate.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And the Fireman's taken off. It was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yes, it was.
I'm reading it now. Actually, I'm about 85% through.
Oh.
That is a long book. It's 800 pages.
Oh, it is. It's a big one. Yeah. I haven't purchased it yet. I just haven't had some time to buy
Well, put
books
a
recently.
lot of time aside for it.
Yeah, it sounds that way. 800 books.
It's a big
800 pages.
Yeah. And this weekend, I'll be going to Vermont Comic Con, where I'm actually one of the. They listed me as one of the artists, which made me smile. It's never happened to me before at a Comic Con. And I know nothing about comics. I know nothing about cosplay. I just barely learned what the word meant.
Right.
But I'm going, and I'm going to be with Kristen Dearborn and I believe John Dennehy.
Oh, very good.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I went there 2 years ago with Stacy Longo, and I sold a ton of books, and I had a ton of fun.
And what town is that in?
That's in Burlington, Vermont.
Oh, okay.
By the time this show's on, it'll be over.
Of course, yeah.
So the next show, I can tell you guys how great I did. But I'm also, one other thing about Comic-Con, I'm going to meet Joe Citro, the horror author from, well, I guess he's a classic horror author. I just really enjoy his work, and I never read his stuff until fairly recently with Deus Ex, and I want to say that was maybe 5-7 years ago. And I've read, I think, almost everything he's written since then. And I got a chance to meet him. He lives in Vermont. We're going to meet for coffee on the morning I go up there.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm really excited about meeting Joe Citro.
Tony, I actually have a question for you. You actually mentioned, speaking of an older author, you said on Facebook today that you bought a book.
John Ferris.
Yes, and you had read it years ago, and you saw it, and you thought it was great back then, and you decided to, and you were reading it.
Well, that was an old post. The post was from, I think it was 4 years ago, so it was just a repost.
Oh, okay.
The memories, things that pop up, and that's what it was. But yeah, I read The Son of the Endless Night in the 80s, mid-80s, and I was a child of the Exorcist generation, when that first came out, going to see that, and that scared the hell out of me. And then reading Son of the Endless Night, that scared the crap out of me too. So A couple years ago, when I went to Nikon, I found it on a table for $1. So I said,
that's a
wow,
good deal,
what a bargain that was. So I picked it up, reread it, and it scared me all over again. So that was kind of nice. And the only other news I had is we did a art on the uncommon art on the common.
Right here in Goffstown,
In
right?
Goffstown, yeah. And I was selling books, and I'm happy to say the people of Goffstown really turned out for the whole art show. They turned out for me. I sold more books at the Uncommon Art on the Common show than I had anywhere else. I mean, it was really a very rewarding time.
Anybody recognize you from the tacos?
You're going to laugh. Yes, a few people did. In fact, one woman came up to me and said, in fact, I was telling Dave Suter, our director, that she watches every show.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and she says, you guys do a great job, and she was very complimentary.
Excellent.
So, yeah, I mean, we have one fan.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, our Facebook page shows a lot of people at least like us.
Oh, yeah. I think
so
there's
a couple of 300. So.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that high, but there's a
Yeah.
few, and people read the post. They may not like it, but they do read the posts.
Yeah.
So, if Ms. Mulligan is watching, thank you again for the kind words. We appreciate it. The only other thing I have left before we get to our guests is the absence of one of our hosts.
Oh yes, yeah. Sydney.
Sydney.
Wasn't able to make it today.
Sydney Lee, yeah. She was planning on being here. She hasn't been here for last couple months, as you know. And an emergency came up literally at the last moment today with her husband. He's doing fine, but he had an emergency root canal, which entitled some
Someone has to
anesthesia.
drive them.
Yeah, so she was kind of not stuck. I shouldn't say that. You're never stuck driving your spouse.
Of course.
She sends her regrets that she couldn't be here. She misses all of you, and she's dying to come back. So hopefully our next show, which will be sometime in October. No, September.
September. Yeah, she actually already contacted both of us, throwing out some dates. So we'll try get one and have her back with us.
We'll have her back with us, and we hope to have some guests, some really cool guests for next month also. Yeah. So you ready to meet our guest tonight?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. Who's the first one?
The man's name is D.B. Poirier.
Poirier. Now he's co-author of a press, right?
Yes. He actually has two presses.
Oh,
believe it or not. Yeah, he has. He'll explain the second one, but the first one is the Great Old Ones Publishing out of Merrimack, New Hampshire.
Somebody else I know is a co-owner of that too, right?
Yeah. I actually participate in that as well.
Yeah. So he's a friend of yours.
Yeah, actually, I mean, Doug met at Writers Group, as a matter of fact. Didn't know who he was, and I showed up one day at Writers Group through a mutual friend, Gregory L. Norris, fantastic author, screenwriter. And I met Doug there, and that was
look where you are now.
5, 6, 7 years ago. Yeah.
And our other guest is Rob Smales, who's and we'll talk about Rob when he sits down, but he's also a friend of mine, and I've known Rob for a few years. He's also a member of the New England Horror Writers Association.
He participates on a lot of those things with Scott Godswood and stuff.
And I'm setting him up, and I shouldn't do this, but when he sits down and reads tonight, you're going to be blown away. He's probably one of the best fiction readers I've seen reading fiction at all these different book selling and book signings we go to.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I got a little story when he comes in. I'll talk about it, but how I found out about him.
Okay.
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
So please sit tight. We'll be back in 1 minute with our guests. Thank you. Welcome back. We're here with our guests.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Great. Our guest is D.B. Poirier. We're going to call him Doug after this. We talked about this before. But Doug loves fantasy, science fiction, and the horror genre. He has been published in many anthologies and also has released a fantasy role-playing game called Thunder to fantastic reviews. A New England native, he lives in the Granite State, which is New Hampshire, with his beautiful wife and 2 adorable daughters. Did you write that?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think so.
He is blessed to have such a loving family and be happier than most man has any right to be. Welcome again to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's all yours.
All right, Doug. It's good to see you, my friend.
Good seeing you.
All right, we have some questions for you to learn, or at least let everybody else know more about you.
Sure.
Out in the internet and television world. All right, let me throw out some questions for you here. The first one is, in the past, you have been heavily involved in role-playing games. Is it true that some of that is what got you involved in writing?
Absolutely. I think that role-playing is an awesome opportunity for people to expand on their imagination and just, play a game and not have to worry about anything, but at the same time tell a collaborative story. And I tend to run the games, and so when I run them, I get to write the premise of the game and the plots. And I always found that there was one thing missing, and when I started writing my short stories, that kind of filled in that gap for me. It was very much more satisfying. Yeah.
What's a role-playing game?
Well, like Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder.
I've never played any of those. Are those board games?
Nope. It's a collaborative storytelling game where a bunch of people sit down and talk about as if they're in character, playing their characters, and make decisions about adventures and intrigue.
So there's a script and they follow a script?
Nope. It's all ad lib.
Really?
The guy,
You know what
whoever
it reminds
runs
me
it.
of? It reminds me of a sandbox video game.
All right. Yeah.
All right, but
that's it.
continue.
Yeah, so you have one person who runs it, and in Dungeons & Dragons they call it the Dungeon Master or the Game Master, and he comes up with the premise and the plot, and the players just choose to react to the situations as they choose as it comes up.
So it's all improvised?
Yes, pretty much.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I go to cons and you see cosplay. All these people dressed up in different, I don't want to call them uniforms, but costumes. And they seem to be having a great time with each other, just talking. I can't imagine acting out and doing all these kind of, verbal plays.
Yeah, it's, no one's swinging swords at the table, I hope, anyway. But, no, people just describe what's going on with their characters and how they're interacting with each other and the world around them.
That's cool. Okay. You're a supporter of writer groups, and so am I. I mean, I love my writers group, and I talk about it whenever I can. And ours is called The Blank Page, and it meets here in Goffstown, New Hampshire. How did you get involved with the writers group?
It's really funny. So when I first started writing, I was working on a novel, and I said, it'd be really nice to figure out how other people do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I just typed it on the web, and it came up in Google, and I answered an email. And we all met at a bookstore, and I think that first night there was like 20 people there. Uh-huh. And that writers group is still going, the Nashua Writers Group, at Barnes and Nobles. And that's where I met Phil. That's where I met Greg. I met lots of authors, lots of people that have been in all of these anthologies.
Good.
Yeah, actually, this one I was shocked when I joined. Everybody at the table, and it was like 15. Everybody had been at least published once.
Good.
Yeah.
That's unusual.
Yeah. It was shocking. I was surprised. Yeah.
Go on. You get some questions?
Yeah. I got some more questions. Now, Doug, I know that you love horror writing, but I also know that you're into science fiction, steampunk, sword and sorcery tales as well. Which do you like writing the most?
I guess I like writing slipstreams. So anywhere I can write fantasy and horror or science fiction and horror, and I can mix the two, I find very enjoyable and challenging.
What is slipstream?
Well, it's just a combination of two genres,
Okay.
two or more genres. Yeah.
It can be any genres?
Yeah. You
Okay.
just combine two or more genres, and people really enjoy that.
Like a steampunk or something?
Yeah, or like, I guess, what's a good example? I guess modern fantasy is kind of like slipstream, yeah.
Okay.
Right. Or for example, science fiction horror. Right, aliens that come and kill people. That would be horror and science fiction combined, right?
Okay.
Things of that nature. And I know you're working on one of those. I know you have that fantasy witch demon thing going on too. A few other things.
I have a lot of things going on.
Yeah. Now, your writing has been heavily influenced by H.P. Lovecraft, usually taking related themes and then mixing in other genres. There I go, like science fiction and fantasy. Why do you do that?
I think it's fun. I think that readers are a lot more savvy nowadays, and I think that we're so used to being bombarded with so much information that we're used to processing a lot of things at once. And if you just give people one stream of thought and one way of thinking in a story, that you lose their attention, they get bored. So they like to see, in my opinion, like to see multiple plots and multiple things happening all at once. And I know for me that I find it pretty satisfying that if I have some suspicions about how a story's going and it turns out kind of like that with a surprise, that it's far more enjoyable than than if it was just plain old, fantasy or science fiction.
Now, based off of what we've discussed, I know you multitask, meaning you have multiple manuscripts, never mind short stories that you write, and a lot of them are works in progress. Why do you drop a manuscript that you could have almost done and take a break and go off and do something else?
So, I mean, if I had a choice, I wouldn't do it that way, but I get struck by lightning all the time. I'll wake up and I'll just have an idea at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I will write for 3 hours or 4 hours. And because I want to get that whole concept I have in my head out on paper, and then I kind of let it sit and incubate, and I go back to something that I was working on that's more of a long-term project. And then if someone comes to me for an anthology that's, horror or science fiction or fantasy, I know I've got something already preloaded, and I just read it one more time, outline the rest of it, and finish it.
So you don't sign a contract, not sign a contract, but you don't accept to go into an anthology until your story's done. If somebody invited you, you wouldn't necessarily say yes.
I've done that too. Actually, one of the first stories that I had published, Peng, which was in Here There Be Dragons by Wickedys Press, that was a call for submissions, and Greg Norris told me about it, and I just wrote that start to finish.
What's that about? Peng?
Peng, yeah. So it's a story about Asian dragons and a boy who's actually a dragon but doesn't know it yet. And his mother is quite distant for reasons we would find out in the story. And his grandfather actually comes, who's a dragon, and finds out that he has a grandson that's a dragon, and it gets pretty exciting. Coming of age tale.
Right,
in an Asian setting.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah. How'd you feel when that got published?
That was the first short story I had published.
Yeah.
And that was pretty awesome. I got to say that I never expected to be published so quickly or have that success. But Greg Norris had a lot to play in that, because he would coach me along, and he would read my manuscripts and give me some tips.
A mentor.
Yeah, definitely.
Good for you. That's the other thing writing groups do, is you wind up with many mentors, not just one.
Right.
But they're, I can't recommend them enough for new writers, people that do need guidance and need some help on the basics.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of insights you get from a race group.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You've got another question before we...
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the role-playing games that that actually influenced your writing. You actually developed one? Why don't you explain something?
I did.
Yeah.
I developed, wrote, and published Thunder Classic Role-Playing. And, for an unknown game developer, it's actually been very well received. When anyone sits down and plays it, they absolutely love it. And so we're cleaning it up, and we're coming out with not another version, but a more updated version of it. And I expect to have that released in February.
Good for you.
Excellent.
That's
yeah.
great. You got one more question before?
Yeah. Let's ask this last question, which is somewhat of interest. Though Lovecraft, as we mentioned, is a huge influence on your writing, what other cinema or authors or stories or role-playing games, for that matter, have really influenced how you approach writing and what you write?
I would say that the biggest influence that I've had was from Dungeons & Dragons, Gary Gygax, and without him, I don't think I would have ever stretched my imagination or even conceived about writing.
And he's the inventor of the game, right?
Yeah, of Dungeons & Dragons, one of the co-writers, and I had a chance to meet him before he passed away, and what an amazing guy he was. In terms of other things that motivated me, I love Sword of Truth by the whole series by Terry Goodkind. For science fiction, I love Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. I like stuff like Starship Troopers and authors like Edgar Rice Burroughs and his the Barsoom series.
Yeah, those are good.
They're good. Yeah, so there's a lot of influences. Yeah.
Nice.
You're going to read for us a couple minutes, and you're going to read
new book,
from some.
too.
Yeah, I was just going to say you're going to be reading from Pentagonal Sextet.
Yep.
You're in this also.
I am, yeah. Eric S. Brown, the author of numerous books,
Bigfoot
he had a
Bigfoot
couple of
series.
movies
Yeah.
Made out of his books, as a matter of fact.
And you talked about Greg Norris.
Greg Norris is in
also.
here too. Yeah.
That's great, and that's new.
Yep, brand new.
That
It just came out last month, I believe.
Good for you. Congratulations. And that's from your press and your press.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Great old ones.
Yeah, and it means Pentagonal Sextet stands for 5 stories, 6 authors. So 5 stories each from all 6 authors. Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead?
What's the name of the story?
So the name of the story is Retribution, and it first appeared in Mummy, Canopic Jars, Tales, Mummy, sorry.
Yeah, that was right.
Tales of Mummies and Mummification. In Canopic Jars.
Yeah, Canopic Jars, yeah.
So this is from Pentagonal Sextet, and it's Retribution. And I'll just dive right in there. The pot jumped into the air of its own accord, lifting Abe's leg, then fell back to the floor with a bang. Abe's focus was drawn to the pot. His demeanor changed, and he struck the pot several times with the back of the hatchet. No, you don't, you little devil. I killed you once, I'll do it again. Abe smashed the pot again, swinging the hatchet with wild abandon. Fear creeped into Red, both the strange pot and Abe's irrational behavior causing him to back away. Abe, what the hell's under there? Abe gave a wicked grin and then began to weep. It's not what's in the pot that's important. It's what's in the closet that would really interest you. Red looked at the closet. It was painted white, covered in scrawls and strange script. One he was not familiar with. As he walked around it, Abe, and over to the door, he could see the nails, the bent and twisted things securing the door to its frame. With a cautious hand, he touched the knob. Something slapped it from the other side. Red jumped back. We have to get you some help. I know some doctors. Again, the pot jumped. This time, a small hand with black fingernails found its way from out underneath. Pinned by the rim of the pot, it clawed at the wooden floor. Stop it, screamed Abe. He struck the pot. The small hand withdrew. Dad, what's going on? Called the female voice outside the room. Penny, what are you doing here, girl? I told you to go somewhere safe. Red ran past Abe to the hallway where Kittredge and his daughter were talking. Penny, you need to get out of here. The situation isn't good. Oh, really? Now you agree with me? Said Kittredge, his voice laced with condemnation. A gunshot erupted from the bedroom. Instinctively, they all dropped to the floor and looked back at Abe. He held his revolver over the pot, his leg still covered half of it. Smoke rose from a bullet hole from the small metal top. I told you I would kill you again. Abe fired 2 more shots into the metal. Kittredge took the shotgun from the wall and chambered it around. I'll kill him before he kills us. Red reached for the gun as Kittredge fired, sending a shot astray. Instead of striking center mass, the blast hit Abe's foot, blowing it clear off. Bloody chunks splattered the floor. Abe screamed and reached for his bloody stump. When his leg came off the pot, it flew into the air and its prisoner freed. A shadow bolted across the room with 2 legs and skittered to the wall, trailing a tail trailing behind. It's the monkey, yelled Kittredge. But it was like no monkey Red had ever seen. Its body was covered head to toe in linen strips, tufts of hair protruding out in places. More disturbing were the dark and empty eye sockets. The creature moved with unusual speed and climbed straight up the wall across the ceiling. Kill it, cried Abe. As he climbed to one good foot and hobbled across the floor with the remnants of his leg. He fired repeatedly as he leaped from ceiling to wall to floor with supernatural speed. Every shot missed.
Geez, that was good. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah. Again, that's in pentagonal sextet. Yeah, I can see I'm going to have a problem with this title. But thank you very much. That was great. Thank you for the interview.
Oh, and the artwork for this is by author E.G. Smith, who is right on the cover. Yeah. He's a fantastic author. He's done a number of covers for horror books.
He has, good, yeah. Well, this one's certainly scary enough. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, Doug.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with our next guest. We're here with our next guest, Rob Smales. How are you?
Good. How are you, Tony?
Good. I've known Rob for years. Met him through the NEHW and Scott, who introduces everybody to everybody else.
That's his job.
A great man, does a good job. And you're going to read a little bit about Rob, and then we're going to go into the interview.
Yes, absolutely. That sounds good. And so we got a bio here for you, and I'll read it out. So this is what we got up for Mr. Rob Smales. Rob Smales is a member of the New England Horror Writers and lives in Salem, Massachusetts. By day, he works for the post office, and during his non-mail delivery hours, he works at and is one of the co-owners of S&L Editing. He also writes horror stories, lots of them. Rob has written for Vampit Publishing, Friday Flash Event, and Dark Media Friday Night, where he wrote over 100 short stories. His longer stories have been published in numerous anthologies, including Insanity Tales 2, Wicked Tales, Dreamscapes Into Darkness, Anthology 3, at least 5 editions of Demonic Tales, and too many others to mention. Rob has had 2 books of his own work published, Carol of the Bells and his latest, Echoes of Darkness. We welcome Rob to the Taco Society. I do have to say, the way I met Rob was I was at Rock and Shock, and there was this table with a bunch of pamphlets, everybody advertising everything, and there was this little pamphlet there that struck me, and I picked it up, and it was a short story by a man named Rob Smales. And I read that short story, didn't even know who he was. I friended him on Facebook, because otherwise you don't get emails when you try to do that. And I complimented him by saying I thought your story was fantastic. And I literally just read it on the whim from a table of junk that people left at a convention. And that's
So
how
those
I met
things
you,
do
Rob.
work, those little marketing programs.
They do work.
Yeah, good for you. That's great.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it was great. That's how I met Rob.
You mentioned Anthology 3. All 3 of us are in Anthology 3.
Oh, and
All-
actually Doug too,
and Doug
all
too,
4 of us.
Yeah, so we're all Antho buddies. That's
Yeah.
quite a
Whole bunch.
coincidence. Yeah. I didn't even think of that before we started the show, but that's kind of cool.
Which is right here.
I'm in that.
That's right. That's right.
You're in that.
Yeah,
Yeah, Doug's in that.
Doug's in that. Before we get into Echoes of Darkness, your latest release,
Yep.
let's talk a little bit about your time writing flash fiction or short stories.
Okay.
You said you've written over 100 pieces of short fiction. I mean,
Yes.
that's a lot. How do you write a compelling short story, or say something under 1,000 words?
It's not easy.
Compelling is the key word. here.
Compelling is a key word. The only way to really make something compelling is to make your reader care about it.
Yep.
So if I'm writing about a particular character, they have to care about that character. The thing with only 1,000 words is you don't have any room to just sit down and say, here's where I'm going to make them care about the character. Here, and you don't get to give a bunch of
That's
that.
right.
It all has to work together like a jigsaw puzzle, and everything moves at once to move the story along. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Uh-huh. Well, you hit the nail on the head. To me, characterization is everything in a story.
Yeah.
If I don't feel for the protagonist, I'm ready to toss the book. I mean, who cares whether they live or die if you don't care for them? But 1,000 words, you're right, you don't have a lot of time.
No.
So you've got to get some sort of angle in there. You've got to get some sort of, not trick, because that's a horrible word, but something to get the reader so
Something
involved.
to hook them in. Yeah.
Something to hook them in. And it could be, if it's not characterization, it could be plot. It could be setting. It could be atmosphere.
Yeah, but in 1,000 words or even less, you're trying to do all those things at once.
Yeah.
Characterization, plot, it all has to.
It's the
It all
meld.
has to mesh.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, apparently you've done a very good job
I
at it.
tried.
And you've done well. While we're on the subject of writing, do you have a routine? Is there, I ask people if they take a rope and tie themselves to a chair. What do you do?
As you said, I work at the post office. I'm a letter carrier, and I'm supposed to be at the office by 8 a.m. to clock in, start work. I usually show up between 5 and 6 a.m.
In the morning?
Yes. I try to be there by 6 latest. I sometimes don't make it, but I'm trying to give myself that 2-hour block, or maybe 2.5, 3-hour block, where no one else that I know is awake, and I don't have anything. I don't have any other distractions. I don't have anything else to do but the writing. And the building that I'm in, the internet is a horrible distraction. It's the biggest, shiniest ball rolling down the street for me to chase after. I work in a big brick block of a building that doesn't have Wi-Fi, and cell service doesn't penetrate the walls. So I'm in there. Yeah, I'm in there for 2 hours, and I can actually focus on what I'm doing.
There's something about you that I know that you haven't mentioned. You don't sleep. I mean, you sleep, but you don't sleep much.
I don't sleep much, no.
How many hours a night you get?
4 or 5.
See, that's amazing. I wouldn't be able to function on 4 or 5 hours of sleep every day.
I can function on 2 or 3, but not for long.
Jeez.
Not for like a whole week. I'd have to chip it back up to 5.
Let's talk a little bit about your editing. You and Stacy Longo, who's been a friend of the show for a long time and been a guest,
Yep.
have a very close relationship.
Yes.
You own or co-own SNL editing,
Yes.
and you're also, or Echoes of Darkness is through her press called Booze and Books.
Books and Booze, yes.
And there's also something called Storyside that you're involved with her.
Yep.
And I guess you can tell us a little bit about that. But can you tell us a little bit about, how that friendship actually did lead to Echoes of Darkness?
You mentioned the Storyside. Back in 2014, I joined a writers collaborative called the Storyside. It has 5 writers in it: Vlad Vaslin, Ursula Wong, David Daniel, Stacey Longo, and now me. Every year or year and a half, they put out an anthology of some of their work, some of our work.
Insanity Tales?
Yes, the Insanity Tales series. And when I joined the group, they were working on Insanity Tales 2, and Stacey is a copy editor.
Yes.
For professionally, and has been editing on the side or freelance editing for quite a while. I have some editing experience, but everything was being funneled as the final edits were all funneling through her for the entire book, which is a massive amount of work.
You're talking about your book?
For any of them.
Any book.
I was
Okay.
actually talking about the Insanity Tales book.
Okay.
And when I joined the group, I said, I'll help out. So I became her assistant for that book. And while we were working on that book, we realized that we actually work quite well together. What we do is very complementary. She has a different focus than I do. And
I caught you guys working together at Anthicon. Everybody's
Yes.
having a great time.
Yeah.
They're sitting on a couch and they're editing together.
Yes, and we were actually working on Insanity Tales too. And we found out that it's much easier if you have a partner, if it's a 2-person operation than just one person trying to do everything themselves. So we started SNL editing, and we're for hire. You can find us on the internet. You can find us on Facebook. We'll do proofreading, editing, the whole works. While all that was going on, I was complaining that I didn't have any place to send people to showcase my work. Everything that I have is short stories. Everyone else in the group has a novel. I don't. So my work is spread out among more than 24 anthologies.
I know the feeling.
So I was complaining that I didn't have one place where I could just send people, this is where all my work is, and showcase it. And apparently Stacey got tired of me whining. And came to me and said, Books and Booze, the press that she runs with her husband Jason, was looking to expand its catalog, and a collection would fit in with what they were trying to do. And she already knew my work from editing me in some of those 24 anthologies, and working together on the story side. And so she said, if you can get together a collection and give it to us, we'll see what we can do.
So that came naturally. That wasn't even a request. She just said, hey, let's work together.
Basically, it was more that she was tired of hearing me whine. But I got together a collection and gave it to them, and that's what we
And that's what it is. You got a question?
Yeah, I do actually, and it's based off of your new book, which is called Echoes of Darkness. The title. Can you take a bit of your time to explain where you got it, the intro to the book, and so forth? Because just go ahead and go.
The title is Echoes of Darkness, and I wrote the introduction for the book, and it actually explains the title. It's pages and pages long, and we don't have time for that now.
But it's just about the title, right?
Yes, but basically the idea is writers, when they have an idea for a story, for a scene, even part of a scene, it is a massive amount of information because we're imagining it and we're getting it with all 5 senses and emotion, and it's all meshed together, and that's a huge amount of information, and all we have to try to capture that is the words on the page. And it's never going to be perfect. We try to get it as perfectly as we can, but we're always going to miss something. It's not quite going to be perfect. If you've ever heard your voice or your friend's voice echoing to you from a wall, it's not perfect. No echo is perfect. You can recognize it as your voice or your friend's voice, and you can understand it quite well, but it's not quite perfect. So basically, all the thoughts that I have, all the stuff that we come up with is the voice, and we throw the voice at the wall, which is the page. And when it bounces off to get to the reader, it's as perfect as we can get it. But it's not quite perfect, but we're always trying.
Is the title also related to, I mean, you're talking about that, so is it have a double meaning because you have the darkness of the monsters and ghosts and stuff, but also what you're talking about as well.
Well, that's where my ideas come from. They come from all the dark places in my head where the things live that people don't normally like to think about.
Right.
I spend quite a bit of time in the dark places in my head that most people try to avoid. But if I can capture it well enough in this echo that I'm bouncing off the page and into the reader, their dark places that they don't normally like to think about are going to recognize my dark places in the echo. So hopefully my dark places in the echo, it's going to resonate with you, and it's going to seem very familiar and hopefully scare the crap out of you.
We've got time for 2 more questions. I'm going to ask one, then I'm going to let Phil finish it off. But I must say, every story in Echoes of Darkness is a winner. I just enjoyed every one of them. And I think part of the reason for that is your narrative style. I just really enjoyed it. You tend to write in a third-person POV. I do it. Most people do it. When I do it, I have a tendency to screw it up, to wind up putting a omniscient author narrative in there,
Yes.
or POV.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard not to do, and I do it. Do you struggle with that? Do you have a hard time?
Every day. Yes. The only way that I can avoid it is, well, my stuff is very character driven, and the only way that a reader is going to enjoy it is if they identify quite well with the character. So I try to have as few distractions as possible for that relationship between the two of them. So I have three little words that are locked in my head like mantra, and it's show, don't tell. And if I find myself, if I'm reading over something that I've written and I realize I'm just telling the reader that's like a voiceover in a movie or a television show. It has nothing to do with the characters in the show. It's a narrator talking directly to the audience. Anytime that I do that, they're focused on me. They're not focused on the character anymore. So I'll try to rewrite and try to get it to
That's a
focus
good
on the
analogy.
character.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it show not tell is one of the tenets of good fiction.
Yeah.
You know, and
We
it's
try.
we try.
Don't always succeed, but try really hard.
You had another question.
Yeah, it's actually
Yeah.
related to that. Basically, you said that show, don't tell,
Yes.
and yet now as an editor, you and Stacy and your company SNL Editing get numerous
Yes.
inquiries, I guess, and some of them you probably accept. Some are probably unsolicited and they just appear, and maybe you open up and take a look. What do they do? Some of them that aren't necessarily what you're looking for. Why they wouldn't be accepted? What makes you roll your eyes? And no people's names, of course, but
Well, I don't think we're ever going to just drop something because it would be too hard. We have suggested some people work with a writing group, as you guys were talking with DB about, but the things that would make me roll my eyes most would probably be if there is it's not a typo, it's not a misspelling, it's if there is an entire sentence or sometimes an entire paragraph that doesn't make sense. And sometimes it's poor writing. It's not always poor writing. Sometimes it is that you can see that they went through and they edited their work and they made a change and they deleted something, added something in, but they didn't quite delete all of it. So half the old idea is still there and the new idea is right next to
Who
it.
hasn't done that?
yeah.
It's the easiest thing to catch though because it's very
course,
big.
yeah.
It's very big.
But that's somebody not paying attention to their own work.
Right.
Exactly.
Or
And
like
that's-
you said, adding something and then not rereading that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They get to the end, they say, I edited it, and they send it out. The best thing you can do is before you send anything out to an editor, a proofreader, the rest of your writing group, your mom, read all of your stuff out loud. Because when
Yeah.
you get to the thing that doesn't make sense, if you're reading it aloud, and your ear will catch things that your eyes just skim right over, and you'll say, that sounded funny. Anything that sounds funny to you is going to sound really funny to someone who doesn't have the entire story already in their head.
Right. Well, and that's an excellent point that you bring that up because a lot of folks, when they write it and then they reread it, it's still good to them.
Yes.
But it's their perspective, so you have to have another perspective, read it, and they
Yes.
go, this doesn't make sense.
Whether it's
Exactly.
reading out loud or having someone else do
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
And everything that I edit for me or for anyone else, I'm reading every single word out loud.
Good for you. Hey, speaking of reading, you got something for us that you want to read.
Yeah, I heard you earlier. Thanks. No pressure. All right. also get I
Oh, you got it on Kindle.
I'm
That's right.
trying
Yeah.
to avoid saying the bad words, so I have the bad words highlighted in here, so
Ah,
hopefully
okay.
I won't actually say them. This is from the first story in Echoes of Darkness called Death of the Boy.
One of my favorite story in the book.
It's about an old man and a boy. It's the zombie apocalypse has happened, civilization's fallen. This boy was traveling with his parents. The zombies got his parents, and another traveler happened by and rescued him, basically. So you've got this 14-year-old kid who wakes up one morning, doesn't have his parents anymore, doesn't have the place that he used to live. It just has this old man who doesn't love him like his
geezer,
parents,
yeah.
isn't going to take care of him like his parents, and insists that he learn to survive on his own. And it's kind of the story of his learning. So, all right. This is the day after the rescue. Where's Mom? Dad? Dead. The word was hard and flat, hitting the boy like a punch. The flashes that made up his dream crowded into his head, the world wavering as tears filled his eyes. His chest had just begun to hitch when a calloused palm struck him across the face, shocking him into silence. The old man was crouching over him again. There's no time for that. Time for you to listen and do as I say, but not for that. How old are you? The boy stifled a sob, touched his stinging cheek. Huh? He flinched as the hand flew again, but rather than striking him, one bony finger extended to touch the tip of his nose. I've got more slap than you have sand, boy, believe me, or time. Lost my horse getting you out of there yesterday. Lost some of my gear. We shook 'em, but that don't mean they can't stumble on us again. Now you best show me how it was worth losing my horse to get you out of there by listening, because I can just up and walk out of here and make it fine on my own, zombies or no. You, on the other hand, may have a little more trouble. I talk, you listen, you answer, you do. Comprende? Yes, the boy managed, imagining for a moment being out there on his own, surrounded by the zombies that had taken his mom and dad, eaten his mom and dad. It didn't seem real, though he knew it was. He looked up at the old man, fear strengthening his voice. Yes, sir. The finger disappeared. Good. How old are you? 14. Seriously? Last month? You're a tall one. I would have taken you for 16, 17 easy. Okay, now strip. The boy blinked. Huh? Strip. The old man straightened again. Get on your feet and out of them clothes. Hurry up. The boy's mind flashed back to what his father had called warnings. Stories about bad things happening to children caught up by bandits and survivalists. It wasn't just young girls who had to worry about men with needs. He'd been explicit enough that Mom had left the room, and the boy had had nightmares for a couple of days. Fear sweat broke out across his upper lip. He got his hands under him and began slowly crab walking backward on his palms and soles, his butt barely clearing the ground. Look, He was suddenly gaping at the business end of a revolver, bullet tips peeking at him around the great staring eye of the barrel. He froze, his two eyes as unblinking as the revolver's one. I said we don't have time for this. God damn it, boy. I checked what I could last night, but I was too damn tired to fiddle with your clothes. I'm getting you out of here, but I ain't taking a chance on you hiding sickness and then dying and turning on me in the night. You dump your modesty and peel off right now and prove to me you ain't been either bitten or scratched or... The gun never wavered, rock steady as the old man thumped the hammer back, and the boy watched as a fresh cartridge rotated into place beneath that hammer, aimed along the barrel, pointing directly at his left eye. I'll put a bullet through your head right now to make sure you won't be getting up afterward and said about finding me another horse. Dark eyes gazed steadily at him over the chunk of metal death between them. One bushy eyebrow quirked. Are we clear? Silent tears ran down the boy's face as he stripped.
Excellent.
How old's the old man in that story?
Older than me?
And let me ask you this. You ever consider doing audiobooks? You're damn good.
I have narrated for several podcasts out there. Tales to Terrify,
you have?
Protecting Project, Pulp, Crime City Central, Starship Sofa.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly didn't let us down.
Thank you.
You lived up to your reputation
yeah.
as
No
a
pressure.
great reader.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much. It was great
Thank you very
having you.
much.
Yes, and
Good
hope
to be
you'll
here.
absolutely.
come back and visit us again when something new comes out.
I will.
And same with Doug, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, we forgot to
absolutely.
mention that for Doug, yeah.
Yeah, we
so,
did. That's
absolutely.
your fault, not
I
mine.
know, fair enough, fair enough.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. We'll be back in a minute to wrap this up. That was quite a show today, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was a couple of nice guests that we had on today.
Yeah,
and-
Doug and Rob were great. In fact, just to go over a little bit again, Rob with Echoes of Darkness from Booze and Books Press.
That's
and,
right.
And yours is?
Yeah, Doug was Pentagonal Sextet from Great Old Ones Publishing.
Yeah. Both great books. I think they're worth your time. If you want to look them up, you can pretty much purchase them anywhere where books are available, either online or at some of the brick and mortar stores.
That's right. Yep.
We hope to see you again next month, which will be September, and we look forward to having Sydney back with us. We hope everything's fine with her. And
Yeah, it was good to be back. Yeah,
it was good to be back. It's been a while since we've been in the studio.
absolutely.
So again, thank you very much, and we'll see you then.